Hello, welcome to the Square-based podcast and video show featuring me, Rob, and your host, Val. In today's show, we'll be talking about everything to do with the old world. Specifically, we'll be engaging in close combat with the rules about the combat phase, and also discussing the new Tomb King miniatures. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the show. Mr. Val Heffelfinger, the co-host with the most power that's ever happened. How are you?
I think we just got to go with one beat. So intros, one beat, and then fade out. And I think we'll nail it. That's where I don't know. This is the only thing I think we've ever not been on the same page about.
I like
when to fade the tune.
I think what's exciting is that eventually you get an entire EDM setup. Yeah,
I just get a loop. I just got like get the loop going.
You press a button, lights start moving.
You sing a middle C for me, Rob.
The entire 1.5 hour show is just me emceeing over.
Rob, how are you, man?
I'm good, thank you. I'm good. I'm very excited because tomorrow I'll be traveling over I'll be taking a trip to Canada. So I'll be on a flight heading towards you to play in the very first Square Bash GT, a Warhammer Fantasy Battle 8th edition. So I'm very excited. How is that looking? Are you ready for me?
Rob, you may not be aware of this, but everyone submitted their list. It was unbelievable. And they were all Warhammer Fantasy lists. It was incredible.
Okay, I'm excited.
I had to there was one guy whose name was Peacock, so I wasn't even that mad. I'm like, this guy's name is Doug Peacock. Of course he's big time in me. He's a peacock.
Yeah. And
he was the only late guy, but he was late by not even. He was late in the last day to submit. So that's the best anything I've ever organized in my entire life. That is easily the best. And although no one replied to a single email I was sending, it was pretty apparent that people read the emails I sent. These are some nerds coming, man. Some nerds are coming. They read emails and were aware of a deadline. Shit's gonna pop off. The lists, I don't know, man. The lists look tough. I realized that I really like my army list because I play in my meta, which involves
your house.
I play. My house.
People at your house.
People at my house that borrow armies from me for the most part. So I haven't really played dwarves ever with the list I'm bringing, and it's super vulnerable. And there's a lot of reasons why I'm suddenly very nervous, but very excited. Also, I really want to just take a moment for the tournament. We had a couple people reach out to provide some pretty awesome prize support. Actually, one of them I bullied into prize support. One of them reached out to us through this very show.
Oh,
so it was actually Adam from War Factor, who make custom bases and things.
What up?
Shop.warfactor.eu, the only plug you're ever going to hear. Provided a gold, silver, and bronze base. And they actually say the F-Bunker on the inside lip of them. So we have first, second, third place for the Square Base GT on those. Now, I can't wait for the trophy presentation because they're literally bases. So they're going to be this friggin' big. It's going to be I win. So yeah, but we also, on top of that, we got some other cool prize support from the Army Painter, and that's who I reached out to. And those guys, honestly, if you just want some paint, just call them and pretend to be holding the GT. I feel like those guys will sponsor anything with a heartbeat, and God bless them.
Yeah, Army Painter have really made me realize that paint costs literally pennies. Because if you're like, oh, I've fallen down and I need some paint, they're like, no problem. We're sending you a care pack of paint. Off you go. So
I'll
I'm
deliver
like,
it
how
myself.
cheap is this stuff? Yeah, I'm like, how cheap is this? This is crazy.
Well, I mean, that's any industrially produced thing per bauble is going to be pretty cheap. But beyond that, they care enough to do it and sent an outrageous amount of stuff.
That's true.
Everyone gets an Army Painter laser beam. Everybody gets... Which is so sick.
Wait,
what could go wrong?
Hold on. For everyone who's watching this and has become recent fans of the Square Base podcast, thank you for listening. Shout out to me and Val. We got to 1,000 subscribers on the YouTube. Let's go.
Ah!
Yeah, all of the episodes are up on our Podbean app and Podbean Square Based, and maybe are also on Spotify not sure about iTunes, maybe.
So last week I went toe to toe with the megalith that is Apple and tried to set up an Apple ID. It took me 5 devices until it would allow me to submit. Turned out an old iPad that I had to literally pull out and charge so that I could log in and set up an Apple ID. So I did get Apple ID set up. Right now, if you look for the podcast, you're going to say, Rob, you're full of shit. There's no podcast.
There is.
However, no, there isn't. So because it has not been picked up yet through our RSS feed into the various platforms. So last I checked, whenever I search for Squarebase, it still doesn't show up. However, my hunch is when we publish today, it'll push all that stuff back out, and suddenly there'll be 4 episodes waiting for all the podcast homies out there. And if that doesn't happen, well, I will certainly get to the bottom of it because everything should be set up going forward from like Friday.
Okay, well, good
and
luck.
And like literally everything. If you tell Alexa that you want to, I just triggered your whole house. Sorry about that. If you tell your robot slave that you want to listen to us, you will be able to because we're on literally every mom and pop platform now, in theory. So when we push out the next episode, it should work.
All right. Well, okay. Well, there we go. But like milestones for us, first 1,000 subscribers. But if you are
1,200, bro, not even 1,000. We're apologies. Like up over 1,200, man.
What 1,200? I apologize. Well, because obviously our immediate goal, so if you are watching this back, obviously do like and subscribe, because our immediate goal is to get to the amount of points that we would need for a Warhammer Fantasy Battle army. So we need at least 2,500 minimum. Yeah.
Depends. Could be 2,400. This is going to be wacky.
2,450? Just to spice things up.
Odds that they even recommend a number?
All right, mate. Just play what you feel.
Do what you got to do. Well, before there was like, I think 2,000 points. Although we did get a comment, which was pretty accurate, which was every time you guys talk about 6th edition, you're wrong. And that's probably true. And I also assume everything that's true about 6th edition also true about 7th. Not true. So I will say this. I'm pretty sure that 2,000 points was important in 6th. I think 2,000. So those guys would be like 2,000 points. Sounds about right. But when you got to 8th, for some reason, everyone was like, the armies are too big. And then the tournament players were like, I want more points.
So, they always want more points. Like, always.
The armies are huge in 8th. Yeah.
Every like, literally come off a conversation this morning where someone's like, oh, there's too many rules in the game. So, like, maybe there should be less rules. And like, because we can't finish it in time. And I'm like, could you maybe play less points? And you like, and I was shot. Like, I'm currently nursing a wound from someone trying to murder me. But what I wanted to say was, if you have, this is the first time you have engaged with us, and shout out to the Twitch chat, we're streaming this live, that Val is running a Warhammer Fantasy Battle event at the Miniwargaming Bunker this weekend called the Squarebase GT. Some of you might not know that. So I just thought I'd let you know what the hell we're talking about, what tournament you're talking about. You know, it can't be Old World. It's not even out yet. So...
we're talking about, although we did name the video the first Old World tournament, which was particularly delightful and clickbaity. The thing I would say about it is there's still 4 tickets. So yeah, if you're seeing this and you're like, what? I didn't hear about it somehow. First of all, you heard about it. You've just been lazy this whole time and haven't taken action. So I will forgive you. If you want, you can still join us. So if you're hype and if you're anywhere near southwestern Ontario, or not. Rob's flying from the United Kingdom. What's your problem?
Exactly.
If you're not American, or if you're American but don't have family you care about because it's Thanksgiving, you should come on up.
Come on up.
Or down, wherever you are.
Okay. Well, that's exciting. Excited about the bases. Shout out to whoever those people were. It's cool. But today we've got some incredible gossip, so we can't dally. I don't want to dally today.
No, we've already preambled a lot of shilling.
Yeah,
a lot of shilling.
Not from me.
Speaking of which, Patreons. We haven't even thanked Patreons. We have so many Patreons.
Oh my God. Okay.
That's so nice.
Do you want me to thank some people?
Thank you, Patreon. That's it. That's all.
Okay, all right.
And you know what? No one else has to. Don't subscribe to Patreon, guys.
Yeah,
we've got it. Yeah, we've done it. Lots.
Yeah, we've literally.
We got all the cool ones.
We've hit the limit, so we don't want any more. But we could thank Tim Harris. He subscribed. Andrew Thomas. He subscribed, which is great. Love him.
Amazing.
Gerald Fitzpatrick. Thomas Konocki. Git Kraken. Oh my God. Grey Wolf. Loads of love to him. Jens Baslev. All those guys. Him. Yeah, love him. Jens. Known him since he was a boy.
But it's been very, very active in the comments.
Yeah, let's go, gents. Well, okay, so what we're going to do is, what do you want to start with first? Do you want to start with the article? Because I think we should
article.
I think we should do article first. Actually,
article. Let's leave with the crunch.
Yeah, we're going to go with the crunch, and then we'll do the Tomb Kang at the end for everyone who's excited about that. So, okay, here we go. And as you'll notice, I've changed the background a little bit, so it's fully square-based now.
Ooh.
Done some resizing, so if you can take some moments to appreciate the overlay. Podcast listeners, just take a moment and just look outside at something beautiful. That's what it looks like.
I got a question. Yeah. I got a question. If we're square-based, why are we in rectangles? And why am I Nathan?
Oh, my God. Yeah, the first one's my problem. Okay. Okay. The second one is anyway. Right. So
there we go.
All right. Okay. So the old world almanac, fight the good fight in the combat phase. So we'll do a classic.
There's some good stuff in here.
Good stuff. Good stuff for the kids. Yeah, I agree. All right. So combat
kids
phase.
are gonna love it.
Yeah, the kids are going to love it. There's a bit in here which made me curl up inside of myself and die.
Was it the opening line?
No, it was... no, the opening... What? So far in the Road to the Old World, we prepared to battle in the strategy phase, jockey for position in the movement phase, and darken the skies with arrows in the shoot phase. It's now time to get the grimmest business of all, slinging swords and shouldering pikes in the... No, that's fine.
No, that was fine. No, there's somewhere where it brags about it being too complicated, and it's like, maybe I should talk a little slower.
Yeah.
That's like Grognard dog whistle.
Yeah,
it was a Grognard dog whistle.
Yeah. It's incredibly offensive the way it's written. But anyway, right, okay. So you may not be surprised by this point to discover the fourth and final phase is divided into 4 simple steps. Choose and fight, which is not a great choose and fight, but whatever. Calculate result, break test, and pursuit. As for the shooting phase, these steps are followed in order for each separate combat. It's too complicated to summarize in full here because obviously we're so cool. But this article should give you a flavor of how it all works.
You guys would understand. It's too complicated, okay? Only like some people can understand. Great, I love it.
Yeah, like, do you even own a movement tray? You suck. Right,
you idiot.
You idiot.
You have a laser specifically to play this game? Did you go to the Square Bass GT? All right, yeah.
Do you know trigonometry? You begin the phase by choosing which combat you want to begin at first. In general, fighting happens in ranks, and only the first rank of an engaged unit can fight. However, a unit with a wider fighting rank than its opponent can still attack with every model in that rank. Your troops surround and envelop the other regiment. So let's kick us off there. How do you feel?
So this is sort of, it sounds like an abstracted version of a rule I vaguely remember, which is called like wraparound, where like if you won combat, you could actually like surround the unit on the flanks. Whereas this feels like if you have a unit that's wider than the one that you're fighting, it just sort of abstract the fact that unit is wider, so it's going to surround the unit that it's attacking. I think it's cool, and it seems to suggest that the supporting attacks from ranks beyond the front row are going to be exceptions to the rule. So either unit special rules or weapon rules. The thing that irks me right now, and this is just like everyone's like, oh, well, if it's only one attack, if you're not in base, then it's no big deal. I'm like, yeah, but what if you just had a 50 wide unit? Like, you don't have to wheel. You don't have to wheel, and you have 50 attacks.
I'm assuming if you're not in base-to-base contact, and it does kind of allude to that later, that you'll only get 1 attack.
Yeah, but that's still 50 attacks. Wow. This is my point. It's like, oh, it's only 1 attack. It's like, yeah, but like if your battle line is as wide as the table, you still get that many attacks. So like, I'm still wondering what the moderating mechanic is supposed to be for frontage. Because like, yeah, if you have a unit that is ultra wide,
maybe it's the wheel, because you have to calculate for the wheel, right?
Who needs to wheel if you're 6 feet long? It genuinely doesn't matter.
Oh no, don't break the game right now. Let's just relax.
It's just so painful. Like, again, I assume this came up in playtesting. And I assume I'm not smarter than this, but this will be the first, if there is no like rule to like rein this in. It is the first thing every asshole like me is going to try is like just make it as wide as humanly possible, walk straight. And then you have a unit as wide as humanly possible, walk straight. Like I guess intervening terrain could get in. Like, but there's never impassable terrain on a fantasy board. Anyway, so my speculation, my concern level remains: what is the mitigating factor for this? Because you're going to see a lot of people at least trying to do bullshit things with it, or
all it is just one piece of terrain in the middle, one rock in the middle of the board. That's it. Solved it.
Yeah, that could solve it or partially solve it.
Okay, anyway.
Because they still have to kill you. Anyway, continuing, yes.
Okay. There are plenty of wrinkles to this. Some models may make support attacks from deeper rank. Multiple units can be engaged in the same combat. And any model that is able to fight without being in base contact may only make one attack this turn. So there you go. So there's that. Once you've worked out who can fight, it's time to determine initiative. Or should we talk about the fact that you can, like, we assume, again, for everyone at home who maybe it's first time, so you normally could fight from a second rank if you had something like spears. Because obviously they add a rule, so to be like, oh, you're using spears. Sometimes units will be able to fight in more ranks because they'll have special rules to also say that as well. So that's how you'll end up with that, like, additions. Normally, like, all these games work in exceptions, right? These are the rules, but these things break those rules. There's an exception.
It could also be an open order versus closed order thing too. You never know, because again, 8th edition had two rules that were really different from previous editions that changed combat significantly. One was that you could fight in 2 ranks, so anyone in the second rank could give a supporting attack, and the other one was something called step up, which we haven't seen confirmed or denied yet. So step up meant that if you got into combat and the other person swung before you and killed everyone in your front rank, you would abstract the fact that obviously the guys would step up and fill that rank, and you would still be able to fight back. So that was very, very different to how games worked previously. Before, if you got in, wiped out the front rank, no one would be alive to swing back at you.
No, they do mention that in the article.
No.
Yeah, okay, we'll get there. Okay, we'll go through. Once you've worked out who can fight, it's time to determine initiative for each model and see who strikes first. The model with the highest initiative statistic strikes first, and so on down the order. With a bonus with a bonus for charging and a bigger one for hitting them in the flank or rear. There could still be a situation, however, where a lumbering foe like a stone troll, who's initiative 1, may find itself striking second on the charge against the preternatural senses of a Swordmaster of Hoeth, who's initiative 6. Okay, talk to me.
I'm pretty sure this is a core mechanic from Warhammer Armies Project. And so essentially, again, one of the many big changes to how combat worked in 8th edition was instead of the charger going first, so you also didn't guess, you had random charges. So we've already saw that in the movement phase. Check out the video if you haven't. And then the second one was that chargers don't go first. They strike at initiative order. And this always made intuitive sense to me. I guess maybe in 40K 7th, that's how it worked. Maybe that's why. But and I can't remember if it did or not. But regardless, what they took here was to give an initiative bonus to the charger, which I think is super cool. Before, you only would get a bonus to combat resolution if you charge. So it was +1 in your combat res, and we'll cover that in a second. But now you get a bonus to your initiative, and you get a bigger bonus to your initiative if you're charging into a more vulnerable place on your opponent. So that means if you charge them in the back, maybe you get +2 to your initiative. Suddenly a human can get the jump on maybe not a Swordmaster of Hoeth, but maybe an elf or something like that. So I think it's a pretty cool way to give a charger a benefit for charging without completely removing what's the word? I don't know, like not realism. Realism is not the word I'm looking for. Immersion. I feel like sometimes it was a bit weird if like a bunch of goblins, these beautiful goblins in this photo, in this painting, sorry. If they charged into the Swordmaster of Hoeth in a previous edition of the game, they would strike first, and that sometimes felt a little weird.
But isn't that like what ambushing is? It's super fair to say like, oh, these guys are quicker, but I'm like, if you jump out from the dark or behind a building and shank someone, like there's only so fast they can be, right? They're not like time stoppers.
Well, I guess to put it into perspectives that a former doorman might understand, if I came running at you, I would still get punched in the face first.
Yes. Yeah, that would make sense. But as did happen to me when I was in the toilet once, if you're checking a cubicle and someone just jumps you from behind, doesn't matter how fast you are, like they've got the jump on you. So
they get a little bit of an initiative bonus, and that's why I think it's really, really neat. And again, shout out to Elias. This is another clear influence, I think, from Warhammer's Armies project. This is not a mechanic I think that existed previously in the game, so it's cool.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay. I like it. I'm going to say I like it. I like it. I think my favorite version of initiative that's in any game so far is if you're the person who does a charge, then it's your turn, you go first, and then it just goes, you go, I go. I think adding in always strikes first, always strikes last, and all that other nonsense ends up really causing some like massive problems in the game. And then immediately, it's hard really to immediately knowing elves will always strike before other stuff has just got an inherent feel bad to it, which, I understand it. And I think one of the things that I'm most excited about with Warhammer Fantasy Battle is it gives me the mouth feel of like the story, if that makes sense. You're absolutely right. An elf is fast, but a little weakling. So yeah, it's faster than a troll, but should be able to not hurt a troll as easily. So, so I agree. So I think there's interest, especially, getting rewarded for doing flank charges, getting rewarded for doing rear charges, etc.
Yeah.
Feels like a bonus. Okay. Once you worked out who fight, it's time to determine initiative. Oh, we've done that already. Okay. Now, this is easily maybe the worst thing I've seen written. Wait, is it still? Yes. Maybe the worst thing I've seen written on a Warhammer community article ever.
Oh, wow. Ever? Okay, hit me. What is okay, go ahead.
The big news is that we're back to classic weapon skill stat. I'm super cool with that. That's fine. And like you said last week, I like the weapon skill versus weapon skill. It really makes me feel like an excellent duelist is against a schlub. No problem. Which means high weapon skill is better, obviously, and that to work out each model's roll to hit, you must compare your weapon skill against theirs. Yes, the to hit chart is back, and it's as beardy as ever.
Yeah, all right.
Come on. Like beardy is like for people, if you're like a Total War fan and you've never been into Warhammer before, beardy is a term that idiots use to describe a feeling that they have inside, but they don't know how to communicate that feeling outwards. What they're saying is that they're emotionally stunted, they're unable to really express what's happening in a game, and so they go, "You're beardy." And then, everyone crumples inside of themselves because of the cringe that they're feeling.
Sure. And it's also literally just numbers, guys. We don't have to be frightened. We don't have to be scared. And it's pretty easy to parse this chart as well. There's something really interesting about it that's very different than previous times. Do you know what it is, Rob?
No, I don't. Can I just read out this? It reminds me of being a team player. This is in the chat. Being patronized by older players. Like it does, but anyway, something that we have been picking up on, and it's particularly emphasized in this one, is that simpler, not simple, was sort of the 40K selling point, and this is supposed to be the game for big brains. Clearly, this is the game that's too complicated, you won't understand. Do you think that someone in the marketing department is like, right, okay, sell this for people who want to be big brains? That's what we want. Do you honestly think that's the plan? Or it's not just some grognard article writer?
What do you think a grognard thinks he is? You think?
Okay.
All right. Number one complaint from this crowd, and this is why they kept the 7th edition rule set in Heresy, is that the other games aren't tactical. They're too simple. Too simple. Yeah. Which is nonsense.
The writer also furious that there's a lady in the Bretonnian army. Furious.
Upset about it.
The thing that's different about this chart is that we get some 2+s. That's what you're going to tell me, right?
That's what I'm going to say. And I don't know how I feel.
Okay, can you explain to me the situation before and the situation now?
Right. So it's very simple. If you had the same weapon skill as your target, you hit on 4s. If you had one better than your target, you hit on 3s. And then if your opponent was twice as good as you +1, this is most easily represented by looking at the target's weapon skill as being a 3 and your weapon skill being a 1, you're hitting on 5s. So double +1 meant that you would hit on 5s. And that was as bad as it got. So as good as it got was a 3, and as bad as it got was a 5. The logic that they've applied to this chart is they haven't done 6s to hit, which is great, but they have added 2s to hit, which is again, I don't know how I feel. That actually increases combat output potential massively. So it was possible to hit on 2s in the old game for sure, and in the old games, certainly in 8th edition, you could get bonuses to hit, so you could modify the dice roll. So you could get a +1 to hit, and you'd hit on 2s, and then that would be a very, that'd be you're hitting a lot, but you're doubling your output. Going from 2 to a 3, if I'm not mistaken. Well, maybe not doubling. That's extravagant, but nonetheless, significantly increasing your output. Going from a 3 to a 2, and so I don't. So that means combat is immediately more killy in lopsided weapon skill scenarios. The good news is that the attacker can still hit back with a reasonably high rate. And I'm also curious that now that it's at a 2-up, if they have any bonuses to hit, can you get to a 1-up? Like, i.e., can you make it so that if you have a negative, like basically, you get to a situation where you're stacking modifiers, like you could have a negative, like a +1 to hit against a -1 to hit, and you're still hitting on 2s. I'm just curious about this.
I think the fact that like the worst you can hit on is 5s is great. I love that. And again, I do like the representation that we see here in that, like, a much stronger melee character is more likely to hit, which is also a huge positive as well. So
yes,
I generally am very fine with this chart again. Like, this is okay. And there's none of this like I need to roll a 6 and then I need to roll a 4. And one of the things that is obviously much better, or hopefully will be much better in Warhammer Fantasy Battle, is that we have a lot more combat in the game. Combat is inherently more engaging than shooting. It just is.
Yes.
Like, so, mainly because there's like a you go, I go kind of situation, which I think is a huge positive. So I'd like to see the combat be good, and this feels fine, if I'm honest, so I'm happy with this.
Yep. This is one of the rare changes that I've just been like, I guess it's just because I really liked the fact that in combat, no matter how hot shit you were, unless you had some other modifier, you're still hitting on 3s like the rest of us. Like it gave lopsided fights, like it felt like you were still in those fights. Whereas maybe this is better. So yeah, it's all good. I'm not mad about it. I'm just like, I have to be aware of my resistance to change, and I need to embrace it and carry on.
Okay, all right, good. Yeah, I personally would be quite disappointed if, like, a high elf lord can't hit a goblin on like a 2, and I'm like, what is going on? So yeah, this is good. All right, okay.
Chat is helping. I want to call it. Chat is helping me out with my very. It is just after 6 o'clock in the morning here. It doesn't double your hit rate, but it does half your miss rate. Is what that does. Perfect.
We love that. All right, you roll as many dice as engaged models have attacks, and with a higher initiative model striking first. A charging unit has the opportunity to overwhelm its enemies before they have the wit to swing back. Next, you roll to wound and make armor saves as normal. Casualties removed from the back ranks, representing the rear rank stepping forward as their comrades bite the dirt. Set every death in each unit aside. So this gets rid of the front rank vanishes, right? Because you take from the back, so your front rank will still get to swing.
That's interesting. That I have not seen anyone read that way.
Yeah, it says you take your casualties from the back, which means your front rank is still there.
In games without step up, I'm pretty sure you still remove casualties from unengaged models. So like you would still be, generally speaking, removing from the back rank. It was just that abstractly there was no one in the front row. So they haven't. To me, that's very hopeful. I hope they step up. Really do, because I think.
But it says representing the rear ranks stepping forward as their comrades bite the dirt.
But when did they step forward? Rob, do they step forward after the combat, or do they step forward immediately?
So you're telling me, like, so just straight on front to front combat. I've got some dudes, you got some dudes. You charge my dudes in the front. You kill some dudes. I take those dudes out the back, and then we're like, no, none of the dudes in the front can fight. That feels.
That's how it worked for every edition until 8th.
Okay, that would be bananas to me. Like, that would be weird as hell, in my opinion.
Right? I agree. I agree, and I've not noticed anyone notice so far that they are alluding to step up being a thing, and that makes me happy. I would be nothing but happy
because it immediately like triggers so many advantageous stat points. Movement and charges immediately become far more significant. Immediately. Initiative becomes even more impactful and less like, it's not just you get to swing first, you get to make it so you can't even fight me back. And also, 100%. And most importantly, it does the worst thing. It makes a game that's unengaging. You charge me, I have to watch you do everything, and then I get no retort. Takes us back to why it's bad about shooting.
And you would have to also just hope you get by on combat resolution.
Oh, that's what. So you're telling me already my tray of wound markers, which I've lovingly painted there, and then you're like, but don't worry, you've got a flag, and you've got 3 units of those wound markers, so you win. You're like, this sucks, man.
Robbo, we're speculating, and I'm saying you gave me hope here. I'm just trying to say you're giving me hope that step up's a thing.
I hope it's a thing, because that sounds silly otherwise. All right, calculating the combat result. Combats in Warhammer, the Old World, are usually decisive. Okay. One side...
True, but yes.
Well, combats in the Old World, not Warhammer Fantasy Battles.
Okay. I also doubt it, based on what they describe that follows, but continuing.
One side or the other makes a breakthrough, and the loser is pushed back or breaks. Unlike in other Warhammer games, you don't flee based on your leadership alone. You have to calculate the combat result. In other words, you work out who's won by totting up who's killed who. It's actually exactly what happens in other games, but whatever. It's not just how many deaths you've caused, however. You get bonuses for complete ranks, for having the high ground, standard bearers, or attacking in the rear. So let's quickly run through what they are. Unsaved wounds inflicted is 1 point each. So if you've done 5, it's 5. Rank bonus gets you 1 point per rank. Standard bearer gives you 1 point per standard. Your battle standard gives you an additional 1 point. Feels like that should be 2, but whatever, because you'll only have 1, right?
Well, you actually do get 2, because normally you would have a standard in the unit, and if you also have a BSB, you get an extra point. So it is kind of like having 2.
All right. Flank attack. So charging the flank, you get +1. Rear attack, you get +2. If you're on the high ground, which will never happen because no one's doing hills, you get +1. And then overkill +1 point excessive wound, and that'll be where you kill a character with overkill, or like a multi-wound model with overkill.
It could be that you inflict more. So we'll have to get the definition. And actually, I was trying to think of what happens here, but this could also just be like you deal 20 wounds. There's 10 guys in the unit. Okay, so you might get credit for just like slaying the hell out of your opponent, which is interesting.
Yeah. And then you got add it all up and see who's won. If it's draw, combat continues the next turn. But if there's a clear loser, they must take a break test. This is a leadership test modified. Anyway, we'll talk about break tests in a second. Combat results, combat scores. What are you thinking?
Well, I think overall, so one, the overkill thing is kind of interesting. I'm just trying to find right now the bonuses. Disruption. Yeah. Anyway, wounds inflicted here. This is what I wanted to see. Outright, maybe go the same. So yeah, you only really got. Nonetheless, our warriors take heart from the harm inflicted in such powerful foes, even if they were not yet down for the count. Do not count wounds that were saved. In other words, only count unsaved wounds. Okay. So it was before it was unsaved wounds. This looks to me like it's just wounds. So that's a big deal too. So if you get in there and you absolutely shred, then that's good. But I guess if you have
it's on unsaved.
If you have overkill, you must be right. Yeah, because if you overkill a unit, there's no one there to resolve combat res. Overkill must have something to do with characters and stuff like in challenges and things, which we haven't heard about. The biggest thing here is that rank bonus is described as 1 point per rank, which is again dangerous. Because you can only be as deep as you are wide. There's no reason why you couldn't be 100 models and 10 deep and get yourself plus 10 combat res. So yeah, I'm assuming there's a limiting factor.
I think they said something about like the orders. I think that like the formations. I very much doubt you're going to be able to have a conga line of dudes.
You can't. It's not a conga line. It is a giant square. You can't be longer than you are wide and get a rank bonus. Okay. That's how the rule is set up right now. So immediately, my thought is like every other game. Every other game has always placed a limit on how many ranks you get a bonus for, or it was an outnumber bonus. Like if you outnumbered your opponent, you got a bonus of some kind. We don't see that here, so I'm assuming there's like a cap on that of +3 or whatever. But again, as written in this limited thing that we have, my immediate thought is okay. Maybe we need a bit more information because 1 point per rank could be a bit broken very easily.
Okay. Okay. Rob, you've never played 8th against units of 100 goblins, it shows. A Reaper in the chat. I've specifically mainly played 8th edition against 100 goblins, and guess who that was? Mr. Nathan Prescott.
God bless.
He had, I think by the end of Warhammer Fantasy Battle, I think he had 300 goblins fully painted, which I'd play against every week. So, yeah.
my good friend out here, Jeff Brown, his 8th list was 4 blocks of 100 goblins.
Yeah, go. Yeah.
When I because I was talking to him about like I've got like 150 goblins. It feels pretty good. He's like, bro, come on.
Yeah, I wrote a list once of lizard men. Sorry, get the words right. I wrote a list of lizard men, which I literally called big blocks, no brains. Which was just like just a Tonosaurus, and I was just like push it forward, and I was like, I've got this. And then Nathan turned up with just like 400 goblins, and I was like, oh, I truly don't have the no brains.
No brains. Well, if you gave him spears, you're at least dumping a lot of attacks out. Like,
I did. Don't worry. Anyway, This is a leadership test modified by how. So now we get onto the break test, right?
This is interesting now.
Yeah, okay. I mean, it's all interesting, right?
Well, I know, but this is a completely, as far as I know, new mechanic. And we talked last week, for example, in the last episode, we talked about some speculation about rules that might be coming in from previous games, specifically Warhammer Ancient Battles. And this is actually explaining how they're using something that they use in Ancient Battles, as well as I believe 4th edition. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, which is what they're calling here give ground, or in other games called pushback. So yes.
Okay. Well, okay. So this is leadership test, break test. So you've done the combat, you've won the combat. They take a break test. Leadership test modified by how much you lost the combat by, and with several outcomes. If you roll, and there's a chart, it's actually easier to kind of talk about. So if you roll like above your natural, if the natural roll is higher than the leadership stat of the testing unit's leader, either the champion or hero model that's joined it, then the unit breaks and flees. If the modified roll is higher than the leadership stat, but the natural roll is lower, the unit falls back in good order. And if the modified roll is lower than leadership stat, or if you roll a double 1, you give ground. As you can see, this is a substantial change from combat rules for the last few editions of Warhammer Fantasy Battles, and instead combines and refines a selection of rules from earlier editions and spins off of the game. It may seem complex at first glance, but it's a mechanic that quickly becomes clear once you've run through it a few times. So, and then they've done, which I am obsessed with, a chart, which is like, yes, let's go. I love this. This is great. So I really like this. So modified roll or equal lower than the leadership, then you give ground. Modified roll higher than leadership, you fall back in good order. And then a natural roll higher than leadership, break and flee. So how do you feel about this?
This is one of the first ones that I found myself like having to take a second to chew over and understand. It is cool that they've taken. So basically, they took a modified value. I don't know anything else that kind of works like this. They took a modified value, but also
the normal value.
They hold the normal value. Both are in play, which is neat.
So
I like
can I just tell everyone
that's finding some design space.
It is
maybe in a place you didn't expect to find it. Maybe it's like finding some cupboards underneath the stairs. You know,
some coins behind the couch. So just for everyone on the chat, so like let's say a unit's leadership is leadership 9. That's the unmodified leadership. However, when you're doing break tests, obviously whatever the combat result is going to be. So let's say it's a combat result of 5. Yeah. Then what's going to happen is if you roll 2 dice and you roll a 5, that's going to be a 10. So that's going to be over your normal leadership. So that's the modified result, basically. Yeah, you'll take away
close. It's your leadership value that's modified, not the dice. So
yeah,
yes,
okay.
it's close. Yeah,
but you know what I'm saying. Like, so you would, and that's what's happening. So you're basically doing a test against what your natural leadership is, and then what the combat result minus, your leadership minus the combat result is. So that's what's currently happening. So that actually this is really good for good leadership units, right?
Yes, because it always gives them, which is interesting because so the basically the lower is better on a leadership check. And so that means that if you pass both rolls, which I would assume means that you've done the best you can do in this scenario, you give ground.
Yeah.
So I'm curious to know really what the difference between give ground and fallback in good order is from a rules perspective, because fallback in good order means you failed your modified check, but you didn't fail your actual leadership check, so you still roll below a 9, but above a 5, falling back in good order, and then. If you just blow both of them, then you have your old school break and flee. You're at risk of losing the entire unit if they get chased down.
Yes.
So fall back in good order is what I'm most curious about in this.
It feels like less units though, because you've got a double chance here before you even get to breaking and fleeing, and you wouldn't always necessarily run down your opponent's units either.
Yes, there's still a chance you escape. Yes.
Yeah. So they've added another step in to stop you from being chased down, and also they've given a bonus to low leadership armies, which I do think did have a problem again, because all of the things that we've talked about previously, movement, elves are faster. Yeah, initiative, elves are faster. Leadership, elves are higher. And so once you start to get armies where just everything is a higher number, it's unsurprising that they ended up being generally just better. Right. In the meta, because you just had so this adds some consistency for the armies while still giving you the narrative that they're dumb stone trolls or whatever. So yes, I feel that's a huge positive.
Absolutely. There's also a lot of mechanics that were built into the game previously to help you in this scenario. Namely, you could use your general's leadership as your own. So usually that meant that as long as your general was alive and they were within 12 or 18, depending on what they were on. You could, generally speaking, have the best leadership in your army. And the second was your battle standard bearer would allow you to re-roll all leadership tests in 8th edition. Previously, it was just all break tests. Combat results, I think. So that meant that even if you were, needing a really low roll, you would be modifying a higher number, and you would have a chance to re-roll against that number. So I'm curious that now that this is less decisive. Or at least less immediately decisive. Like if you were to lose a lopsided combat with a very good unit, there's a good chance you're not losing the entire unit. In previous episode, I talked about how it was a big adjustment for me to get used to the idea that combat resolution, which is what we're talking about here, was where a lot of the damage would be dealt, because you would lose units, not necessarily because they were killed to the man, but because they would break and flee from combat and get chased down. Now, it's much less likely that is going to be the outcome. So I wonder if they also will have as many buffs to being able to juice your leadership and also re-roll these types of things.
Yeah, I think having I think that there's an additional feel bad with just having your units run down very quickly, and everyone's got a great story of where they incited a mass panic across the entire of someone's army and the whole thing ran off. But actually, game design wise, I travel across town, wherever, to come and play you. We put our models down. You cannon off a character turn 1, and then everyone runs and flees. And you're like, well, this is a terrible game, start to finish.
Well, that was fun.
Yeah. And that's the game's fault, not the player's fault. So the game needs to protect the players in lots of ways. That's how I think about game design nowadays.
Yeah, the worst example of that happening to me was actually in 7th edition 40K, not fantasy, in which someone shot. I had 4 Riptides, 1 in a unit of 3. And they killed the unit of 1, and the 3 broke and ran off the table. So I lost 4 Riptides.
Sucks. Thank you to Prince Fox for subscribing for the first time. That's cool. Yeah, thanks. Okay, so we'll be discussing morale, breaking, and psychology next week, but we'll still investigate the final step of combat: pursuit. Run them down. When you win a combat, you have a range of choices depending on how many the enemy reacts. Restrain is you pass a leadership test to avoid pursuit and instead reform your ranks for free. Follow up, a unit that gave ground re-entering combat a few inches forward. So it does sound like giving ground means you do get to move back. And then pursue a unit that flees or falls back. If you catch a fleeing unit, it's cut down and destroyed. If you catch a unit falling back, combat begins again, and the pursuer counts as having charged.
Okay, cool. All right.
Go on. Do you want me to read over on, or do you want to do those three first?
I think those three first, because I just sorry to interrupt you. But just pursue answered my question about what falling back in good order, what the benefit of that is. Mm-hmm. So I guess what I'm seeing here then is that follow up gives you the opportunity to not actually pursue. So if they gave ground, you can actually stand there. So if that's important, like in your if your opponents charge you, or say a combat has lasted to your opponent's turn, and they are pushed back, follow up means that you can actually choose not to go. Like you can actually just stand there, allowing you to shoot it or charge it again, or any number of things. Mm-hmm. And then on pursue, that's what falling back in good order is. That means that you fall back, but you don't lose the unit if you get caught. So that's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, these feel very standard, like what I would expect the results to be, but they do give you a bunch of options, and I like that the options in some cases, and like, you know, a more organized force is able to restrain versus, you know, a bloodthirsty horde is less likely to restrain and is about to yeet forward, which adds a lot of story. I'm seeing Old World, like this is the lens I'm viewing it through nowadays. I'm seeing Old World as a game that is attempting to tell us as much of the story of how the units work while playing the game versus like a well-constructed game. Like that's kind of what I'm after, and I'm cool for that. Like that's very fun. Then we got overrun in the case of the victor, because it's a good story point there. Go on.
And also, what's cool is that again, relating back to that dynamic point, combats before, if I lost the combat but I passed my leadership test, everyone just stays put. That is not a possible outcome anymore. No matter what happens, if at the end of the combat, the units are going to be moving, the game state will change. There's no longer going to be static battle lines of just guys standing there and swinging at each other until someone runs away. Now there's because you could get to a situation where one guy wins one turn and the other guy wins the next turn. You know, you could have a back and forth.
That's really cool.
So again, it adds a little bit more like what you were just talking about. Like it adds a little bit more narrative feeling to the push and pull of battle, which is fun.
Yeah, which I'm all for. And then we've got overrun. In the case of the victor has completely killed its target, it may make a full move directly forward. If you end up in another combat, that counts as a fresh charge. Clever use of overruns will have heavy cavalry licking its lips. So such a weird phrasing. To like what am I meant to just picture a horse licking its lips there? Like what?
Precisely. Chewing a carrot, getting ready to kill things. Yeah.
Okay, all right. There's plenty more to the combat phase. Wizards can use assailment spells. For instance, while units fighting from behind a barricade or wall benefit from the extra protection. While units fighting from behind a barricade or wall benefit from the extra protection. Like, it feels like that's a sentence that wasn't finished in the article. It's like, for instance, and then just like read that with me. There's plenty more to the combat phase. Wizard could do assailment spells. Perfect. For instance, while units fighting from behind a barricade or wall benefit from the extra protection. Stop. Nothing. Yeah, and they do have really harsh.
They do have really harsh word count limits, so it could be that they just deleted the next two sentences. That
like
is very
Twitter,
possible.
Like Twitter is like, you cannot write anymore. And like,
Yeah.
Oh, sad. Okay, there are other rules such as this didn't work because neither of the two next rules relate to being near a wall. So it's just important to talk about.
Indeed.
So we've got two different spells. We've got Hammer Hand, which is cast on 7, and a single enemy unit engaged in the caster is 2d3 strength 4 hits at AP-2. And then you've got Soul Eater, which is also cast on 7, and a single enemy model the caster is engaged in combat with suffers a strength 3 hit with a multiple wounds 3 rule with no armor saves permitted. Ward and regeneration saves can be attempted as well. So that feels pretty good. 3 wounds to an enemy character in range. Yeah, so
you know what?
Go on after you.
No, it's just kind of interesting that in the combat phase, like sub-phase breakdown, they don't say when magic happens. So I'm curious to know when does this happen? Does this happen is this an attack? Like, does it happen at the wizard's initiative step? Does it happen at the top of like after turn? Like, does it happen at the start of the turn?
I reckon this happens at the wizard's initiative step. That makes the most sense. You get to the wizard and you're like, what you can do with your wizard now? And he's like, right, he's going to do an assailment spell. I think is going to be the situation, which legit is awesome. Like now I'm just like absolutely hype about that. Having a wizard in the front ranks. He's like, hammer hands. That's cool.
I mean, it doesn't seem like much at first glance, but 2d3 strength 4 hits with an AP of 2. That's pretty dope. That's, averaging 4 hits. In this game, again, does this hint at more attacks for characters? Because in the old game, if you had 4 hits, that means you were probably either a very efficient weapon skill and maybe had a reroll, or you had a bucket of attacks because you're not hitting them better than the 3. So 4 hits. 4 strength 4 hits with an AP of -2. That's very good. At least from the frame of reference of 8th edition. So yeah, I don't know. Hammerhand OP.
Hammerhand's really good. Like it sounds good.
Seems good.
Yeah, and even Soul Eater is good.
Hammers for hands, mate.
Yeah, me hands are hammers. Me hands are hammers. Okay, that's it for this week's Rule Snapshot. Next week's installment is about morale and psychology. Fear,
what was
terror,
the other
hatred.
one? We didn't do the second one.
We did. I did. Yeah. I talked about it. It's multiple strength, one single strength 3 hit, multiple wound 3, no armor saves, but ward saves and also regen saves can be taken.
Cool.
Yeah.
Very cool.
So I mean that's particularly good into certain units that just are only the armor save, right?
Are only armor save, or like an ogre or something like that, where you probably don't have a good armor save, but you got lots of wounds.
Yeah, but
not as cool as Hammerhand.
No, not as good as Hammerhand. And it's a strength 3 hit as well, so that's still going to wound.
Yeah.
But
okay.
But that's, and then next week's going to be terror. So, like, how are you feeling? What's your feelings? Coming off that article.
My feelings are actually coming off of this discussion even better than they were when I read the article. When I read the article, you saw I have this tendency of spamming Rob while he's trying to do things during his day.
Well, especially 2 days before I'm about to fly to another country,
which apparently is my house. So anyway, and so I understand that usually it is a one-sided monologue, but I was very excited yesterday as I was messaging him about these things in a non-consensual manner. And I think actually once you pointed out that step up thing, man, like I'm even happier now. Like I think that's very good. I think there are 2 elements that seem too obvious to obviously not have some sort of mechanic that resolves them, namely unlimited rank bonuses and unlimited width. I think there's definitely going to be things that must I really hope will mitigate them. And if they don't mitigate them off of out of the gates on day 1, there will be some form of fix for them later. Because they do just seem immediately as things that would be busted up by a tournament player immediately. I'm very excited.
They've had a bunch of tournament players playing through this, so I'm assuming that there's
and that's why I'm very, because I know that is something that people are concerned about, and so I'm quite confident that if it's obvious to me, I am by no means I am not the audience Warhammer community is writing for. I am not the big brain, and if I can spot something that may be abusable, that means that like I'm missing something even bigger. So. If it's that plainly obvious that it would at least create like non-immersive situations, then I'm sure it's been caught in playtest.
My only concern is that what I've said about units stepping up or whatever is wrong, and I would find that bad game design. My personal opinion, the fact that you don't get to swing back feels. I understand people are going to say, "Oh, hey Rob, no, like it makes a lot of sense. Like you ride in, you wipe out the front rank," and I'm just like, that isn't also even how ancient battles happened. That is
100%.
That's not how it worked. They didn't just go in, wipe out the front rank, and everyone stood behind them were like, "Well, guess we'll stop." Like they went.
So again, we're talking about game mechanics that people had, like, because a lot of people kept playing the older editions of the game, and especially since the game was ended. When people decided on which edition to go back and play, a lot of them have picked ones before 8th edition, which is awesome. Like they really, really love them. But as a result, they've been playing this game in a certain way, which is guess your charge range. So you never know what your charge range is. But if you do make the guess right and you get the hop on your opponent, that means that you get the chance to kill them before they can kill you. So like that was the heart and soul of Maneuver and how you played Warhammer for a lot of people before 8th edition and also up until this present day. So it is
Jesus.
It does seem like for an 8th edition player, it is actually, it does kind of ruin my immersion. The idea that, like they hit each other and then just the front rank dies and the guys behind them are like, whew, glad it wasn't him. Like
I'm glad I can leave the war. I'm off to leave the war now.
Ooh, dodge that one. Like that to me always just seems, that always seemed a bit weird to me. So, but I can see how that is, if that was how you thought about the game and that's how you thought about everything to do with your strategy, then yeah, it would be jarring to not have that. However, it sure feels like a couple of things are highlighting this to me, that we're going to have deadlier combat. So it's easier to hit for elite troops, and also your characters, which will probably be a big deal. And it also seems like you might not have supporting ranks behind you, but you can certainly have supporting attacks on your files that are outside of base-to-base contact. It feels to me like there's going to be more damage potential, and that maybe that's why they wrote that combats are often decisive. Feels like there's more damage potential in combat, and therefore I would assume step up exists. But we'll see.
Interesting. Okay, well, so the final piece of this puzzle for this week, very excitingly, is the preview that we got, and that
the rumors about the zombie dragon. Sorry, the skeleton dragon.
Turns out we
were right. Is this even real?
Turns out we were right, buddy. Turns out we were right.
Look at that good boy. Worst photo of a model I've ever seen, though.
Yeah, okay. Let's jump off with a bad bit. Is the photo's really bad and makes it look really flat. Okay,
and also agree. You can't see most of the model. You can't see the wings. It's hard to parse what you're looking at from this angle on it,
because it's also been displayed against a white background, and
Indeed.
Even the launch picture was against an even more hilariously almost bone textured background. So and the presentation was bad start to finish.
Do we have a profile shot of him? Because it's really makes me sad that this is the shot we have of him.
There is another profile picture. I'll go grab that from Twitter in a minute, if you will. And then we've obviously got. It does look like, quite excitingly though, that it's a dual kit. I'll say,
yeah,
because there's two different builds for the rider, and you also get an additional Tomb King on foot if you if you build it a certain way, which is awesome. And I really like that. So what's your shouts? Because actually, when I first saw it, I was hype, and everyone was hype. But then, and everyone agrees it's a really bad photo. Everyone agrees it's a bad photo. But the kind of follow on from that is that I think some people aren't liking it as much.
I think he's awesome. I think he's awesome. I think because of the way he's built, because he's a skeleton, even if he is assembled in a weird way, it's going to open up a lot of opportunities to repose him. So if you want a more dramatic, less crocodilian posing, I'm sure that's possible. He looks like the skeleton of the famous chicken dragon. I don't know if anyone's ever seen that. I think it's one of the original dragons that Citadel ever released. It's just basically a lump of lead. So he looks like that without any flesh on its bones. I wonder if that's the illusion they're making, or if I'm crazy about this. Chat, help me out. Am I crazy about that? And I really, really love that he's also in the alternate build, sun safe. He's got a little canopy above his howdah, and keeps that. It's got a nice tattered canopy over him that will keep him safe, and that's nice. There you go. That's a little better. Yeah.
Yeah, so we put up a better picture now for people. I mean, a lot of people, some people have taken photos of the wings off, Photoshop the wings off, and people are enjoying that as a range as well. I think it would be interesting to, just put the howdah on the back of a Necrosphinx or something as an option there as well. I think that would be cool for some, fun kind of kit conversions and stuff. And ultimately, I think, these designs are, I don't know, are they trying to give a nod to some old world aesthetic while also these aren't, what we're seeing from AOS, where we're seeing these clearly influenced by modern design. We saw the Elden Ring style Flesh Eater Courts come out at the same time. And these are I think from many of the designs they've given a huge nod to the aesthetic of the past.
Yes,
and I feel that's what we're seeing here.
And also with skeletal mounts, it's really hard to evoke anything when you don't have any of the stuff that like allows you to project those things. Like you have no muscles, you have no skin, you have so you don't have a face really. Like they gave him an angry eye socket, which is kind of funny. But like when you think of like skeletal horses, they often look a bit like not very cool, like bedknobs and broomstick style. They look like a pile of clattering bones. So I think they've done a good job with this guy by giving him those really pronounced teeth and those like really razor sharp claws. A lot of bangles on his hand. Looks like he might be going to the club after. So like the razors on his tail. They do make him look imposing and vicious. Another thing that I took away from this is another confirmed base size. It looked like a 100 by 150 size base, which is the largest base we saw in Warhammer Fantasy. What's what the Zombie Dragon and Terrorgeist came on, and the Ragnarok Spider. So it's cool that the biggest models are still on that big base. But yeah, and also continuing a theme that we've seen, like with the Pegasus, a little bit of value in this kit. I mean, it's probably going to cost $1 billion, but you get an extra model out of it.
It's plastic.
Yeah. Oh yes. Yeah. Sorry.
That's true. News. That's huge news.
Well, yeah. Well, yeah. We yes. I think that goes without saying that this one's plastic. So that means we should get one more plastic kit out of them, and hopefully it too will be useful. But like we saw with the Pegasus hero for the Bretonians, you basically get one guy riding a Pegasus, but then you get the bits that'll allow you to make another BSB for your army or another hero for your army from the different rider options that came with. This one literally looks like it has an upper and lower body, so that way whoever's not mounted on the dragon, you literally get a second character for it, which is nice. Normally that's not something that they do, and that seems to be a conscious choice that they've made with all the plastic kits that we've seen, is that they have a lot of utility. So with the Bretonian Knights on Foot, they were built in a way that are more modular. So the arms and the torsos and the heads and all of those are separate. They're not like jigsaw puzzles like some kits are. And that means that you can buy a unit of Foot Knights and spruce up your Knights of the Realms or make some cool Grail Knights or something like that. We're seeing that hinted at here too, where we're only getting 2 plastic kits probably, but you might get a lot of utility out of those kits. Also, guess who we saw in the video? Guess who we saw?
Who?
We saw Derpy McSkeleton Bros.
So we've confirmed big hand skeleton guys back.
Big hands, baby. Thick posts.
Yeah.
Thick, big old fatty spears. Yes. So they're back, which that would probably confirm to me all of the Tomb King Core infantry is back, which means all you speculate is out there can breathe a sigh of relief. All of those very expensive Tomb King skeletons you've bought are still the current model.
So to round us off, I had a bit of a shower thought this week, and I want to run it by you.
Rob in the shower, go on.
Had a bit of a shower thought this week.
Do not look in the ceiling vent of the guest bathroom if you could.
There is not a ceiling vent. Again, the Chinese restaurant that I live inside of doesn't have the But anyway,
did Inspector Clouseau live in a Chinese restaurant or above a Chinese restaurant as well? You might actually come from a proud tradition.
I think that would be really fun. It's something from Tristan in the chat. Interesting fact, this was designed by many designers. The Howdah was sculpted by Steve Paints and Sculpts as a training sculpt. He is now a former STS designer and went into Instagram. The riders were sculpted by someone else and the dragon by someone else. The Howdah was done before the dragon. There you go. That's interesting. Thanks, Tristan. Yeah, a lot of these things are kind of done in group because they in Forge World, Specialist Design Studios, there'll be someone who's like the monster person.
Okay.
So and someone who's the character person, and so they generally tend to. But anyway, that's kind of
specialist is in the name, buddy.
Yes,
so you can't be a specialist design studio if you just got people who are polymaths. No, you got to focus on what you know, baby.
Yeah, exactly. So that's fun. It's a collaborative effort. Yeah. Okay. So this is kind of my my takeaway. This is my shower thought that I want to leave like people who are watching this stream, anyone on the Patreon, like, and then people who are watching this back on podcast. So I got out my End Times books the other day. I was very excited, and they're brilliant. They're super cool, and I want to start this entire bit with I intend to buy the books. Which is I normally don't advocate for buying the books from Games Workshop.
Oh, I see what you mean. Yes, okay.
I normally don't.
Yes.
Yeah. So I normally don't advocate for buying books, right? But like, I'm quite excited to read about the lore. And ultimately, like, I probably wouldn't buy the old world stuff, depending on how they're produced. If they're more like modern 40k books where it's just like a pamphlet, then maybe I'm less interested. Okay, jury's out on the books, but probably buy the books. However, I got all my End Times books and I thought, oh my God, how much did I spend on these? And then someone earlier in the week, because the Empire Free Guild on Griffin is actually pretty good in the Cities of Sigmar army. And I was like, God damn it, I'm going to have to buy another one. So obviously I gave you mine. And long gone, of course. And then I kind of thought about like just all that stuff that I did buy and how it was wasted, and I got a little bit miffed earlier in the week.
Oh God, Tremont Fair. It's getting you to Canada.
Yeah, but the bit that the bit that kind of bothered me was I thought about it, like, and I thought I'm not 100% certain. Like, I'm, as you all know, like, I've been hyped about Old World for more than a year, right? Like, that's why we've been doing the show for a long time. But I was actually like, you know what? They did literally blow up my universe, my game, and also a lot of value, financial value, and also time value that I'd put into a lot of products. And I'm not 100% certain that like I'm willing to refinancially like input, especially from those plastic kits. So like, I think my kind of shower thought is that I think I'm still a bit pissed that about everything that I think about everything that happened. And I think I'm going to probably mainly 3D print all, most, if not all, of the miniatures that are for my Old World projects. And 3D printing my miniatures is already a good example anyway. And I guess it is like, like in retribution, but also like I don't really know why I would buy old, because you brought up the skeletons, why I would buy old big hand skeletons when there are much better modern skeletons that I could have, as an example, for much cheaper. And so, like, that's kind of my shower thought, because I think a lot of people are going to be on this state. A lot of people are going to be in this place, returning players at least, new players. You can make your own choices. But I think, I was just kind of like, fuck. Like, I got annoyed because I was reading through the End Times books, and I bought every single End Times book. Yeah, I bought and Valor Test. I was very much into Warhammer Fantasy Battle. I had a lot of miniatures. I played
6 skills, baby.
Yeah, I played every single like week, if not 2-3 times a week. So I loved it.
God, I wish I could play that many things of anything.
Yeah, and I was just kind of like, bro, I think I'm just gonna have to like not do that. Does that make sense? And I'm sure that's a feeling or a conversation a lot of people are going to be having with themselves.
Yeah. So my thing on 3D printing and has always been like, I buy my collections have always been comprised of legitimate GW that I bought and built and painted myself, secondhand GW, China cast for things that I had wanted but didn't want to pay full price for. I always thought that was a weird pricing strategy on GW's part, that they could actually sustain a bootleg market for their models because their pricing was so bad. But anyway, resin 3D parts from Poland and Spain. My orcs are almost a lot of them have those things. And now that 3D printing is a part of it, I really love 3D printing. For me, what matters is, are you getting value from whatever it is you're buying? So like if you're looking at those Tomb King models and you're thinking, these look like garbage, I don't like the look of them, I'm going to have to spend so much time erasing mold lines from the middle of those spears and from every weird angle of these things. It's going to be a real pain.
Mold lines, yeah, unbelievable.
unless they've retooled in some fashion. But anyway, that wouldn't make sense either. Like there's for example, and Tristan posted it in our Discord. There's a really beautiful STL set that came out. I think it's my favorite Tomb King core infantry, horses, skeletal warrior type thing. And that goes over and beyond some other options. That's recently launched. And, my Tomb Kings, for core infantry will likely be or there'll be secondhand models that someone has sold at a reasonable price. I would like to put myself as model agnostic. And that goes not only for, not using GW, but also using GW. There are just going to be some things from Games Workshop that are awesome and I'm going to want, or maybe even things that I don't own that would be nice to be able to buy at retail. For example, I don't have Carl Franz on Deathclaw or the mage on Griffin. I found him a bit obnoxious and kind of useless in 8th edition. I never needed him. There will be all kinds of gaps in my armies, and from that way, it'll be a new game. Things that were good before will not be good now. And how I replace those will largely depend. For example, looking at my dwarves, my Chaos Dwarves and my regular dwarves. Right now, those lines are incredibly outclassed by third-party options. You've got Highlands miniatures for standard dwarves are gorgeous, and it's a complete line. And you've got Infernal Dwarves for Chaos Dwarves from Titan Forge. Incredible, beautiful things, plus the ones from the guys that you really like, and I never remember their names. They do Bretonnians, Tomb Kings,
Lost Kingdom.
Chaos Dwarfs, Lost Kingdoms. And for me, it's about is the STL or the 3D print or the third-party model, does it fit stylistically into a Citadel range of models? And I would say in the examples I've given, 100% yes. And you're going to get an army that is going to be unique and beautiful, and you're going to give an independent person some money. Don't steal these things, by the way, guys. You're going to give an independent person, a designer, some money. Maybe one day they'll design for Citadel. And I'm still going to buy a bunch of stuff from Citadel. Certainly the books. I love my it's the only completionist shelf I've ever had is my 8th edition collection of stuff. And I'm going to want to keep doing that for assuming the value's there. And by that, I mean that they're releasing books that are, more of an artifact that actually have, pride of design and some effort put into making them. They've been calling back a lot of the old artwork. I want those things. I don't see why we have to say we're not giving GW a penny. I think if they earn a penny, they get their penny.
I hope that didn't come across.
I'm not speaking that to you. I'm not saying that to you. I do see the sentiment around.
Okay.
I do see it around. I also do not prescribe to the corporate charity mentality of if we don't pay them for this, they're gonna take it away. As you've seen from the run of the Legions of Horus Heresy or whatever, the epic Horus Heresy game, it's completely sold out. It's gone. So they're going to produce. They're going to basically produce a run of this game that is enough for them to justify the expense of the game, and it's going to sell out immediately. And then
they won't make.
You might not have a choice.
Yeah.
So I don't think anyone has to worry about making sure that they're doing their bit to support old Games Workshop. Again, if GW worked as hard as they are right now to earn players and by that I mean having engagement, releases, talking about rules, talking to their community in a way that they think maybe they're wrong. They want to be talked to in the sense that this is a complicated game and you guys are so smart. Oh, look at you. You're so smart. You know how to use charts.
It's quite flirty, isn't it? It's quite a flirty post. Yeah.
If I was, the neckbeard is probably thinking like, oh yeah, all right, cool.
Oh my God.
So, if they earn it, they deserve it. And, they are they moonlight sometimes as a cravenly capitalist organization. Usually they're just rent seeking. And as long as they're not rent seeking, i.e. making me buy stuff that I don't want or need and is of a low quality, then we have a deal. And so far, everything indicates to me that they won't be doing that they will be producing quality stuff that I won't be tempted to, replace with a bootleg 3D print because I'll want the original thing because it's awesome. And that's all they have to do because they are, at the end of the day, as much as I brag on them, as much as I give them a hard time, they are really good at making awesome shit. Really good at it. Really good. I wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning to come hang out with you to talk about their stuff. Clearly, I like it. So, As long as they're producing stuff I like, they're going to get my money.
Yeah, I think what I'm trying to say is that I think I'm going to be that, like, because I basically, like, I hype checked myself. I was like, Rob, come on, like, come on, you bought so much of their shit, and they just literally kicked you in the dick, and you were like, and it was an awful time, and it sucked, and I had put a lot of man hours into building armies, producing armies, and this is a feeling a lot of people have. And I'm like, and I think basically what I'm going to say is they're going to have to fight for my money versus I'm just going to throw it at them. Does that make sense?
I get it. And I'm saying that all indications to me is that they are earning it right now. And thank you, SDS, for doing that and making this a labor of love. But also, Rob, your response to being kicked in the dick was, why don't I go work for them? Followed by, why don't I dedicate my life to creating content for them? So, like,
well, no, not them. That's super important.
Not them. For the community.
Thank you very much. Like, and also I went to work for them because I was like, maybe I can help these dickheads out. Yeah.
Right.
And I think I did okay. I did okay for a bit. Yeah. I did okay for a bit. Right. That's important. Yeah. And then, like, I had a bit of a moment this weekend because the Warhammer Championships was on, and both of us have been invested, in that for a long time. And me and Val did have a meeting, like, a chat, like a dinner, like 5 years ago, maybe longer, where I did say at some point you're going to see there be, like an esports style event, and then, they're going to be live streaming it. And it took, I put those initial stages in, it was live streamed on a Warhammer Twitch channel I created, and a bunch of other stuff. And, that happened this weekend. So I was happy and
proud. They were using a show that I designed. So there you go. We both.
Right. So we pushed the envelope forward for the community at least, but I definitely don't make content for Games Workshop because otherwise. I'm sorry,
I phrased that wrong. What I'm saying is that if you were kicked in the dick so bad, you didn't then go play Warhammer Hordes or Magic the Gathering. You know what I'm saying?
Because importantly, I do really like the thing. That's the really like if anything, that's evidence that I like the thing. The evidence that I like the thing, and I'm not like some like corporate weirdo who's just like I don't care who works there. Do you know what I mean? I just like the thing and exploring the thing. And so that's the thing that's exciting for me. And then also ultimately the alternate sculptors probably also going to explore more of the thing as well. And that's actually really exciting 100%. For me. So I think that's good. Like, I
think because you like the thing, and I think that's what whether you're talking about Star Wars fandom or if you're talking about old fantasy players or even current 40K players or any of these things, when you get really attached to one of these worlds, and the custodians of it, or Game of Thrones finale, when the custodian doesn't love the thing as much as you do, that's literally unrequited love. One of the most awful scenarios a human being can find themselves in, where you're not getting back what you're putting in. And so far, and this is kind of how I felt in the lead up to 8th edition, I won't lie, 8th edition 40K, not fantasy, was they had done everything they could to make us go away, and we were just standing outside the window with a boombox. And, eventually they came back with something that was so much fun. It was collaborative, super engaging, a really exciting period to be a part of the community, and, got me head over heels involved in tabletop gaming and all of the amazing things that have come with that for me personally. And then when they got away from that in 40K and they probably, a year and a half of 9th edition, they forgot what got them there for sure. And turned me off so hard that I cannot look at a 40K game right now without being irrationally upset, despite people enjoying it. So I totally get the kick in the dick thing, and I really hope that doesn't happen here.
No, the thing is that what I'd like to do is I'd like to protect myself from that process. I think that's basically where my shower thought came from. Opening those End Times books made me so I remember poring over them and thinking up army ideas and buying kits.
Right.
So I was like, I'm going to do this. It's going to be so fun. And then and then to just have rocks dropped on you from space was crazy at the time. I'd also like to point out that my other version of this, again, because I'm a huge fan, my other favorite version of this is that I've been one of my favorite Horus Heresy books. I'm also a Horus Heresy fan. I'm generally just a fan of this stuff. The Horus Heresy fan. Mechanicum is my favorite Black Library book, probably. And And then I have collected the Horus Heresy Mechanicum range, and then when Mechanicum came up for 40k, I collected that as well. And then I was
Right.
like, at the time, I was like, okay, 7th edition, obviously this is nonsense. What a terrible company. But then 8th edition, they're like, we're going to revisit it, we're going to change it all up. Be like, okay, great. Obviously, you're going to sell the Horus Heresy stuff so that you can use it for 40k. That would make the most sense. All those miniatures are incredible. Also,
Fires of Syraxis.
Yeah. And then you're like 10th edition, 9th edition, and then 10th edition, and you're like, 9 years or whatever it's been of like the best models languishing, like, and to be heartbroken about like not being able to use toys which are great in the setting in which they literally exist inside of. So like I think that's what happened this week. I think I reality checked myself, and I was like, look, you've been a fan too hard, too much. You've been too passionate about it for too long, and you need to be more conscious of that when you start building your old world armies. So I think that's going to happen for me. I think, unfortunately.
We've touched on this a little bit, and I think I'd love to pick them on this thread, because I will say that I let things beyond my control ruin something that I really, really
exactly.
You know, so what was interesting to me about abandoning 40k, because I literally, again, people love 40k, and they are right to love 40k in the similar sense of how people love AOS. But there are people who cannot forgive AOS for the fact that it only exists because fantasy was destroyed out of nowhere. Right?
You see my latest video?
I shall. You know, like I get that. And so when I said, you know what, I became a toxic member of the community because I couldn't open my mouth about 40k and not say a nice thing about it or be interested in any of the positive aspects at all. Whereas before you knew me on the adjacent show. I was full blown GW apologist. The app is too important. It cannot fail. They could not possibly screw this up. I've had some terrible takes out coming from that perspective. And I think what going back and playing the dead game has done for me, so playing 8th edition, is took me out of that rat race. So I wasn't like a super obsessed with every single thing that dripped out of GW and what level of quality it was at. 8th edition fantasy is what it is. And, you can, and if it's not what you want it to be, you can fix it. And on top of that, there still exists a community out there that maintains it and, keeps the flame alive and, provides means of accessing and playing the game that maybe is better than it was out of the box. And that's where I think this is a situation again where they can't hurt us. If they release derpy skeletons, well, that's dumb because I would have loved to buy your very not derpy fancy skeletons, GW. I'm going to go get better skeletons. No problem. You can't hurt me. I'm still going to play the game. I'm going to buy the rules 100%. I'll probably buy every book and I'll buy a lot of the cool kits as I see fit. But it's not about, what they release or what they do is ultimately beyond my control. If we find out there are some mechanics that did get through playtesting because they didn't really push the boundaries, we will, by the way, whether they're the ones I've highlighted or they're ones that are discovered in time. There will be stuff that's just winds up not great out of the box. 100%. That's going to happen. Well, what are we going to do about it? We'll fix it until they fix it themselves. And that's how I see it. I think the biggest mistake of 8th edition 40K was the community giving everything back to GW and saying, you tell us what to do. I think the most beautiful thing about tabletop gaming and the communities is that they were community driven, that we solved our own problems. And that in a lot of ways, we answered problems that GW still hasn't gotten back to, looking at you chess clocks and floor rules at your world championships. There are still things that the community can do better than them because we value different things than what they value. And as long as we don't lose sight of that, they can't hurt us.
Yeah, that's really important. In my opinion, now we take after the greatest community that exists, and that's the Blood Bowl community. Blood Bowl community is self-policing. They're self-managing. They're like, we've got 1 billion different kits and alternate scopes from everything that we could ever want. So, you can't be mad at us. The Blood Bowl community don't care, and they just have a growing and thriving community with so many people playing. And it's absolutely the right way to go when it comes to community building, which, as we have stated, the Square Base podcast show, universe, our job is event creation, community creation, and building and developing a community who are fans around this thing. with the intent to include people in that, not exclude people. That's the point of being #SquareBast. So that's the goal for the future, which is fun, and I'm looking forward to it. So I'm looking forward to next week. I'm looking forward to this week when we get to play some Warhammer Fantasy Battles and be SquareBast.
Oh man, it's gonna be so much fun. I'm really excited. Again, still 4 tickets left. If you are nearby southwestern Ontario, Toronto, if you're anywhere within 8 hours, come play. The last thing I want to point out was we were talking about the end times. We were talking about AOS and where that came from. Rob has always told me the name of the man who killed the end times, and I wasn't sure. Killed fantasy, and I wasn't sure how to take it. And well, wouldn't you know, Warhammer or Games Workshop's therapist, Jordan Sorcery is a YouTube creator who has just been going from interview to interview to interview, and his most recent interview is Allan Merrett. And Allan Merrett, in that, Jordan doesn't say a word for 15 minutes while Allan Merrett tells the story of how he killed Warhammer Fantasy. And I think it will be one of my first edited videos for this channel. Because it is just such an incredible peek behind the curtain. Ultimately,
do you have a TLDR?
TLDR was basically Merrett was always a production guy, and he was involved in IP towards the end of his reign. And he claims to have suggested the idea of a sort of a narrative framework where you have sort of different realms that people could go between, so you're not really tied down to any sort of physical location or place. And then he talked about the discussion around, well, how do you bring this game in and also fix the fantasy problem? Because the fantasy problem at the time was obscured by sales in other areas, but essentially sales weren't great for fantasy before the end times. And they were looking for ways to solve it. And they came to the conclusion that if you half-baked it, i.e. you had 2 games, like a skirmishy fantasy game and a rank and flank fantasy game, you wouldn't get everybody to come over. And so they decided, he actually recommended that they kill fantasy. He said, I did it. And here's how I did it, which was fascinating to me. It's somewhere around the halfway to 2/3 mark. If you wanted to skip ahead, I should go find if the timestamp's not in the comments, someone should add it there. And oddly sympathetic, I would say. I expected him to be quite crass about it. I couldn't tell if he ate a burrito or if he was genuinely emotional. He kept kind of swallowing. It was either indigestion or emotions. I couldn't tell which. He was English. I
wonder if you mentioned, pursuing and engaging in Chapter House, which destroyed GW pretty much a ton, or mention all the times when he would be wildly abusive in the workplace, as is these stories I was told multiple times. When he
definitely
was
less focused on that, Rob.
When he was golden shaked out the hand of the company, I've never heard so many. I was new. They were like, "Oh, Allan Merrett's going." I'm like, "I don't know who that is." They were like, "He's a monster."
Down the Witch is dead.
Yes. He's a fucking monster.
Yes, he was also a guy who, again, and you see this in a lot of low-cost companies. He came from literally the casting warehouse. So his first gig was pouring lead into molds, which they discovered at one point was radioactive, which I thought was hilarious. But at any rate,
amazing.
Lots of great stories in it, lots of great insight. Whether or not you do find him sympathetic, that's obviously not, that's up to you to decide. But I mean, as far as a revelation as to how could this possibly have happened, it is a firsthand account of how it happened from the guy who, at the very least, advocated it. Obviously, other people needed to agree. But it's a fascinating chat, because I do find that in the fullness of time, AOS was important because the game system that they built for AOS was such a disaster. And you'll note that everyone involved in the decisions around the end times and around the launch of AOS, they were all gone by within a couple of years, because it was such a disaster. And AOS was rescued by its community. 40K was rescued by its community, and that's what we see in Blood Bowl. Well, Blood Bowl never needed rescuing; it never stopped. But yes, Blood Bowl definitely maintained by its community. And in 2017, when you get 8th edition 40K, you get a version of 40K that reflected its community. You get, and with AOS 2.0, you get a version of AOS that met the needs of its community. And that is all because these guys screwed up so badly. You know, I'd never liked seeing someone lose their jobs, and it was probably a golden handshake. It's a fascinating interview. And also the flip side of this, and then I got to go. Gav Thorpe is also interviewed at length, and Gav Thorpe talks about when he did Storm of Chaos and that moment where he tried to essentially do the Secretix Maledictum, 15 years before it happens in 40K, but for fantasy, where, you know, Chaos is president. It basically changed the setting, move it forward, make it more exciting. And he was essentially vetoed. And it sure seemed to me like that was the moment he decided to leave the company.
I just want to very quickly just talk about Alan Merrett's golden handshake. My favorite story at the time at Games Workshop is he was given the Heavy Metal as a goodbye, the Alariel model that you get in Age of Sigmar now. He was gifted the Heavy Metal one. And then literally the day, they were like, thank you very much. It was a whole ceremony. There it is. And the day later, like one of the guys at the studio was like, "What have you done?" And they were like, "We need that for photography." Like, do you have any idea what you've done? Like, that's really important. Like, anyway,
some good stuff. Worth a watch, and so is our show. Thank you, everyone, by the way, for all of the comments. I've responded literally to every single comment that has ever been made on the show. I will continue to try and keep that pace up until I'm fat on Patreon money and my ego inflating beyond the need to respond to my fans.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. But I won't respond. Okay, right. So it's been a pleasure. I hope you've all had a lovely time. Thanks for listening and being square bassed. Don't forget to be square bassed in your community. Loads of love from us to you. See you all soon. Goodbye.